People say that we're only limited by our imagination. But you know what? Our very own imagination is limiting. What's beyond imagination? I think that would be inspiration. I've been doing some thinking here lately, and I was just thinking that my imagination is so finite. As a kid, we thought of, ridiculous, wild and crazy things, and people said, oh, it's a pipe dream, it's never going to happen. But these crazy things we thought of as kids are now reality. Like, I remember watching G.I. Joe and having this telecommunication where it's video conferencing. They didn't really have that back then. Now it's normal. They had these little communication devices way before smartphones that did that, and now we've got the technology that we saw in these cartoons that somebody imagined as a kid. We're only limited by our imagination. It seems like the older we get, the less fluid our mind is, the less we allow our mind to expand and grow, and it becomes more rigid, and our imagination gets stunted. Maybe because we've spent so much time in reality, and we've had so much time dealing with disappointments and discouragements in life, it's caused us to kind of be afraid to imagine and afraid to dream, and therefore we don't anymore. Our imagination becomes more realistic. Yeah, it's still out there. Yeah, it's still hard or impossible to do or obtain. And we just think that, it's beyond because it's our imagination. You've heard people say the phrase, beyond your wildest imagination or beyond your wildest dreams. Well, we need to start living and thinking like that. After all, didn't Yeshua say that if you don't become like a child, you can't enter the kingdom of God? And he's talking about trust and faith there, but I think that we can take a remez or take an allusion or a hint of that very passage. If you don't become like a child, what does a child do? A child has an imagination. When you put a coloring book in front of a child, they don't have to color the sky blue. If they want a purple sky, they'll have a purple sky. If they want pink trees, they'll have pink trees. If they want a person to be green, or blue, they'll paint a person green or blue. There's no rules. And when they play, they have such a vivid imagination that's just wild and crazy and beyond. There's no borders, there's no lines, there's no limits, there's no anything. And I think we need to be like little children in our spiritual lives, in our imagination, and in our thinking. So as I said before, what goes beyond imagination? I think what goes beyond imagination is inspiration, because inspiration, to inspire, is to breathe into, which alludes to something outside of yourself. You can't be inspired from within. You can't inspire yourself. You have to be inspired from the outside. Mouth-to-mouth resuscitation is a form of inspiration. You're breathing life into that person. And just as God breathed into man's nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul through, Adam, so he gives us inspiration. His spirit comes into our heart and our mind and inspires us and goes beyond our imagination. Yeshua said that if we had faith, whatever we ask or think in his name, according to his will, as long as it doesn't violate Torah, right, that he'd do it. And we sell God so short. We sell ourselves so short. We read about the parting of the Red Sea. We read about Yeshua raising the dead. We read about how Yeshua said that we would do greater things than he did, but do we actually believe it? Do we actually believe it? I mean, we can imagine it, but do we believe it? Are we inspired? Hey, those are things that are beyond our wildest imaginations and dreams, but it can happen because God is above our space-time continuum and our dimension and our realm. Therefore, he's above all the laws that govern this realm. He's beyond science. He's beyond physics. It's crazy. And here we are, limited in our own imagination. Okay, I've been rambling on for about 5 minutes about imagination. Where am I going with this? Well, I've had my own dreams in my life. I know what talents God has given me, what gifts God has given me. And I've been trying to use them to the best of my ability. But because of religion, because of reality, because growing up, I've put God in a box and I've limited him to the status quo, to the run of the mill. I know he's called me to preach and teach, and at one time I thought, oh, he wants me to be a rabbi. I tried to start an online congregation, and I fell flat on my face because God said, no, I'm not calling you to be a traditional preacher teacher. I'm not calling you to be a traditional rabbi or whatever. And I was limiting God to the traditions of what man has defined a pastor or a rabbi to be. And so I said, okay, God, inspire me. God, call me. Show me what to do. Help me to go beyond my limited thinking, my limited imagination. So I've been producing videos and making things like this, and podcasts and teachings, and just trying to think outside the box. And God's taken me and taken my talents to places I never dreamed or thought or imagined. And when you think, and with the advancement of technology, a lot of dreams are more achievable. A lot of people, well, I want to be an actor. I want to be in Hollywood. I want to be on the big screen. Well, anybody can be on the big screen where they're seen by a worldwide audience. All you need is a webcam or a smartphone and YouTube, and boom, you got it. You're there. And so the only thing that limits us is our imagination, really. And we need the inspiration of God to show us what to do with the gifts and talents that he's given us to give honor and glory to him. Here I am making a sitcom. If you would have told me like 2, 3, 4 years ago that I was going to be making a sitcom, I'd laugh in your face. I'm like, I don't have the brains or the smarts or the talents to do that. I don't have the technical savvy to do that. But here I've already made one episode of Home Accents that I've put on YouTube. It's crazy. I never dreamed. As far as ministry, I just thought traditional ministry, teaching, preaching, and I've done that. I've taught classes. I've been guest speakers at churches and different functions and different things like that. And I thought, okay, and I've done my own webcam stuff, the Daily Drosh, the Monthly Musings, Ray Bash's Ramblings, what I'm doing right now, Torah Tidbits, the Weekly Way, stuff like that. But God has taken it so far beyond. I'm doing this Home Accents sitcom, doing the Dr. Dialect with a buddy of mine who's a believer, and he's got talents, and we've got such great chemistry, and we play off each other. If you would have told me 2, 3, 4 years ago that I would be in ministry with another guy doing comedy, I would have laughed in your face, because I didn't have the imagination for it. Because I was limiting God by man's expectations of traditional ministry. It had to come from outside myself, the inspiration of the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, to be able to infuse that in me, to even think to do that. So God has taken my talents and my gifts and my abilities way farther than I could have ever dreamed or imagined or even thought. It's unbelievable. So I've limited God. I've put God in a box. I've drawn lines around God. I've made borders around God. And God is a spirit. God is limitless. He is beyond borders and control and walls and boxes. And I've got to remind myself that I've got to become as a little child and have a crazy wild imagination and think big and dream big. If not, the Lord is not going to bless me. So the Lord is blessing me, and what I thought was my pathway to online ministry and to success in online ministry. I thought it was one path, and God is totally taking me down a different path I never dreamed or imagined. It's inspirational. It's come from Him. It didn't come from me. And I look back on the road that I just traveled, and I'm like, whoa, God, you're just so awesome. You're just so amazing. Like, how did I get here from there? There's a lot of other things kind of floating around in my head. It's going to be kind of a potpourri category on Jeopardy, kind of Ray Bash's ramblings. Other things that I've been thinking about is I've been thinking about God's provision. God's provision, especially financially. This has been, honestly, it's just been a rough financial year for me and my family. It's the first time in a while we've kind of been behind on some things and kind of struggling to make ends meet. And I'm like, God, help us. And, I was given to God here and there, and I don't necessarily believe in the traditional quote-unquote 10% tithe. I think the tithe is directly related to the Levitical priesthood in the temple, but nonetheless, as a remez, as something alluded to, something hinted at, or, as a drosh, or as an applicable measure, I believe it's a good rule of thumb to give 10% to ministry and give your 10% of everything you have to God, even though there is no Levitical priesthood in operation or standing temple. So I think it's a good idea to give. And I mean, I was given, to God and given to ministry, but I wasn't given at the very least 10% off the top, faithfully like I should. And I was thinking, man, maybe this is why I'm in this, maybe this is why our family's in this situation. So, man, I mean, no matter where the money came from, if it was a gift from a friend, if it was an odd job, if it was from my employment, whatever, I said, I'm going to start giving, 10% off the top faithfully. And sometimes you get so financially strapped, you're like, I can't afford to give. I need every penny to go to this bill or this crisis or this cause. But you can't afford not to give. You can't afford not to give. I mean, do you believe God? Do you believe that He's going to provide? If you honor Him and put Him first in everything you say and do you believe that He will provide? Well, since I've been doing that, I've been getting phone calls for odd jobs like crazy on my days off, on my days that I don't have a client and that I don't work. I'm getting calls to mow yards and to, clean houses and to do odd jobs and things like that. I get an unexpected gift from someone just out of the blue, like an offering, say, hey, I want to support what you're doing, or hey, I want to support, this home accents project or whatever. And boom, just the money comes out of the blue. I mean, we're still behind and we're still struggling, but you know what? We're chipping away at it and we're starting to get ahead. And all of a sudden, God is bringing opportunities I never thought that would come my way. And I never thought that I would say yes to. One thing I've learned in my lifetime, my short life, is never say never, never say no to God. One time I said, I'm never going to move any further south than Nashville because I didn't like the closed-minded Southern mentality of Protestant Christianity that they were condemning because it was non-traditional and different. But yet, guess what? I spent a year in Eldridge, Alabama at a children's home as me and my wife were house parents. Never say never to God. So there's other times where I've said, God, I'm never going to do this. I'm never going to do that. And God, just because of His sense of humor, to prove that He's God and I'm not, to prove He has the last say and I don't, to teach me and prove to me, never say never, He brings an opportunity my way and I rethink that never. And I see this opportunity that makes me reconsider my never and say, man, this is God's way of providing. And I end up saying yes to what I said I would say I would never do. So God is sending opportunities and things my way that shows me that He's in control and that He's providing. And, these trials and tribulations and these struggles, they're necessary to build spiritual muscle. And I did a Ray Bash's ramblings on spiritual muscle. They're necessary to stretch you and to stretch your faith, to build your faith, so you don't grow stagnant, so you don't grow numb, and you won't be satisfied with the status quo, that you keep fighting, you keep reaching, you keep stretching. Okay, let's jump off that horse and jump on another one and ride, right? The other thing that's been kind of bouncing around my head is Lashon Hara. Gossip, slander, rumors, and accusation. How damaging that can be. And how foolish people are to repeat things they don't know are facts. In the news media and in social media, especially with, actors, directors, politicians, news anchors, All it takes is an accusation of spiritual or of sexual misconduct, just an accusation alone, and that person's already stigmatized, labeled, they've got the scarlet letter, they're branded. You don't even have to prove it anymore. Just think it, just say it, and automatically people think it's true. Not saying that these sexual improprieties never happened. I'm sure that they are legitimate cases out there. But out of all of them, what percentage is real and what percentage is he said, she said? Accusation alone, and it's not real because somebody's wanting a quick buck or somebody's wanting revenge and ruin somebody's career and reputation and break up somebody's family because of false accusations. And how much of it really did happen? Where is the audio, visual, DNA, hardcore, hard copy, hard facts proof that this stuff happened? But people are just, it used to be, our culture used to be based on innocent until proven guilty. But, now it's guilty until proven innocent. And even if the person is exonerated and proven innocent, there's still that stigma there's still that lingering doubt in the back of someone's mind. And just because of the accusation, their life and their reputation and their career is ruined. People start questioning them, even if they've been exonerated. So just by accusation alone, it's so dangerous. And we as believers in Messiah Yeshua should be above that, should be above reproach. There's several examples of this. Like for instance, one of the reasons Yeshua was crucified, let's put all the prophetic, this was necessary for our salvation stuff aside. It was people assuming and taking out of context what Yeshua said. For instance, he said, I'm going to take this temple, tear it down, and build it back in 3 days. They thought he was talking about the literal temple in Jerusalem. He was talking about his body, but nobody bothered to ask. Nobody bothered to try to figure it out. And so they took this accusation to the Jewish council, and that was one of the strikes against him. Nobody bothered to ask. So people taking things out of context, people embellishing the truth. And embellishing facts to exaggerate them or to twist them or to pervert them and to make them seem like something they're not. There is a rabbinic story where, because the death penalty, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, etc., etc. In regards to the death penalty, the Jewish Sanhedrin at one time took the death penalty so serious that they had to know that it was totally hardcore, airtight case that somebody's guilty and deserves the death penalty. And a story is in Jewish legend and tradition about two men who go into a building, into a house, into a structure, and only one comes out alive. And the person who comes out alive has a knife in his hand, a bloody knife in his hand, and blood on his shirt. Automatically, people think, oh, well, that guy killed the other guy. It's obvious. It's obvious. But the rabbi says, no, hold on. Did anybody actually see this guy kill the other guy? Did anybody actually witness this? How do we know it's true? Because somebody could have come in through a back door, through a window, through the basement, through the chimney. They could have come in through some other way that was unseen by somebody else, and somebody else could have killed that person and framed this other guy and left the scene. So there is a shadow of doubt. You have to give the person the benefit of the doubt. We don't do that today. We would just see the knife and the blood, say, hey, it's obvious. The guy killed the guy. The guy's in there dead, and this guy's the only one alive. He's guilty of sin. You don't know that. Nobody was there. Who saw it? And so a lot of times the death penalty wasn't enforced because they just simply couldn't prove it because there was no witnesses, and they had to let the guy go. Maybe the guy was guilty, but they had to let him go because there was no proof. Proof was so important, and now not so much. Not so much. So... And I've had some things said about me that weren't true, where somebody has taken a video or a devotional or a blog or something that I've said or written and have taken it out of context. And I'm thinking, if this is what you got away from it, if you even questioned what I said, or was offended by what I said, as a believer, it's their responsibility to come to me and says, hey, this is what I heard you say. Is this what you meant? Or is this what you actually said? Or it sounds to me like you said this. Is this what you meant? But nobody bothers to come privately. Do they have to do that? Yeah, because Messiah said so. If you have aught against your brother, it's your responsibility to go to them and to deal with the fault. And if they don't listen to you, bring 2 or 3 witnesses. If they don't listen to them, then bring them before the elders of the congregation and settle it that way. But we follow too much of our customs and traditions of man-made religion, and we overlook the simplicity and the simplistic commands of Messiah Yeshua that he instituted for the believers to follow. We've got to get back to that, folks. We've got to get back to that. Anyway, that's my soapbox. I'm going to step down. This has been Chris Shoemaker, also known as Yehuda Ben Shomer, for Ray Bash's Ramblings. Guys, thanks so much for listening. Shalom and Shavua Tov. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to press the like button as well as the subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and the notification bell that'll let you know every time I make a new video. And don't forget to share this with a friend. Also, visit our website at abrahamsdescendants.com. Thanks. Shalom. abrahamsdescendants.com. Getting back to the 1st century in a 21st century way.